Hello, this is Noreen Crone-Findlay from Crone-Findlay.com and tottytalkscrafts.com. Today I'm going to show you how to weave a hexagon. I'm using Lily's Speedo Weave loom, a vintage one, but this technique will work on any hexagon loom. Now, the pattern that I'm going to show you is an open mesh that's based on the geometry pattern, the Flower of Life. And so I will get started here by just pointing out what we need to do this. You need to have a loom. You need to have some sort of yarn, whether it's cord or wire or ribbon. Today I'm going to be using spool knitted or lucite cord. String, fabric strips, t-shirt yarn, any kind of yarn that you want to use, art yarn, handspun, whatever. How much do you need? I have my loom set up so that it's 8 inches along each side. So that's 20 centimeters if you speak metric. So to weave the Flower of Life pattern on the loom, you'll need 21 yards or about 19.5 meters of your spool knitted cord or lucite cord or whatever you're going to be using. If it's thick and chunky and you're only going to use it in 3 layers. If you need, if you're using something thin like wire, you're going to need to double your yardage at least, because you're going to want to use at least double the layers. You'll also need a netting shuttle. If you don't have a netting shuttle, then a tatting shuttle works just fine. And scissors, a craft needle, thread, floss or yarn to do the tying process, a tape measure, and a ruler. So that's what's needed. Now, there are specific steps in making the hexagon. They are, first of all, you're going to set up your loom. If your loom is adjustable, like the vintage Lily's Speedo Weave loom, then you're going to need to set it up to the size and configuration that you want. Then the next step is to wrap the loom with the layers going in 3 directions. This is you really have to pay attention to the starting point of the wrapping. If you start on the wrong peg, you're going to be absolutely scuppered. So I'm going to point that out when we start doing that. After you've got the 3 layers wrapped, then you'll finish and tie off the ends. And then after that, you will, I'll just bring this down a bit so you can see that a bit better. You'll be finishing the outside edge, the perimeter edge of the weaving. And then you get to the really fun part, which is knotting the cross points and forming the individual flowers that then will make the complete pattern. And then, ta-da, voila, you will have a gorgeous hexagon that you can use as itself or in something else that's absolutely wonderful. So let's get started. I have to excuse our little dogs. We are in midsummer at this point while I'm filming, and we are getting daily intense storms, electrical storms, and one of our dogs and our little foster dog are absolutely terrified of the thunder and lightning, so they get pretty vocal about it. I am making my Flower of Life hexagon using cord that I spool knitted on the knitting machine, but I could just as easily be using lucite cord or any of the other kinds of yarns, t-shirt yarn, wire, whatever. When I'm done weaving this, I will show you a hexagon that I did with wire. Don't use wire if you have tendon issues, because it's very unforgiving. Now, I put a little heart right there on the, there, you can see it? It is, here's the corner, skipping one peg, and this is going to be our starting peg. Small snoring chihuahua who snorts like a pug. Okay, so this is going to be our starting peg. Don't start on the first peg. Don't start on the corner peg. You do need to start. When we're doing the open mesh, you absolutely have to start on what is the third peg. You know, corner 1, 2, 3. And I know I'm sort of belaboring the point here, but if you knew the number of times I had messed up by starting on the wrong peg, you'd understand why I'm saying start on this one. Okay, so we're going to start on this peg. Now, because I have spool knitted cord, usually if I was going to start with yarn or of some description, or cord, or string or ribbons, I would wrap it around the loom and tie a knot. But because this with spool knitted cord or lucite cord, I can just push it down onto the peg and start that way. And oh, look at that! Look at that! I put it on the wrong peg. Duh! Hello. Yes. Okay. Getting the brain in motion at the same time as the mouth. You have no idea how challenging that is at times. Possibly you do. Okay, so now I have finally placed it on the correct peg. I'm going to skip the adjacent side. I'm going to take it up to the side that is across from it, not directly across, but at an angle. I'm going from the left-hand side around to the right and coming down. I'm going to skip one peg, so I've made that loop. I'm going to skip one peg and go around the next. Now, what I usually do is I take my finger and I feed out a loop and place it on the one peg over across the loom. And that makes it go pretty quickly, so that you will be tracking along the outside edge of the loom. See how you're leaving a line along the outside edge of the lower side? Eventually that line will go all the way around the outside edge of the loom. Now, just continue across the loom. I'm going to scooch this over. I'm working on the table, which is works for setting up the stand, but it's pretty clumsy, so it's a bit slow. But there we go. We've worked our way across. Now, I'm going to turn the loom. I'm going to skip the peg closest to the corner. I'm going to skip the corner and that first peg, and then I'm going to do the same thing I did on the first layer. So you'll notice that these loops are going to be placed as I move along this side. They're going onto pegs that already have loops on them. So that tells you that you're in the right ballpark. Here we are at the center, and you absolutely do need to have if you don't end up with a loop on the center peg across the loom, on your second layer, go back and fix it, because you know you will have made some sort of mistake. And you want to fix it now and not when you're starting your knotting, because the knotting process is pretty complete, and unpicking the knotting is really not that much fun. I say this because guess who's had to do it? Me. Okay, so I'm turning for the third row, and again I go past the peg that's closest to the corner. I'm going to go past the first peg, and I'm going to start with peg number 3 and up across, skipping every other peg. And this row is this top layer, it's really easy to do because you've already got loops on the some of the pegs, and so it shows you pretty clearly. Whoops, there we go. Sorry, I was chatting and not paying attention. Now this one, I'm skipping a loop, and this one I do want to have my center pegs have a loop on them to keep the continuity. And here we go across. Just about finished. And now here I am. I'm at the beginning, the starting point here. And what I will be doing is I will start by threading these yarn ends into a needle, and hopefully I have made enough cord, I'm pretty sure I did, to go. There's little tufts and things when the knitting machine sort of barked on me. And where's that starting point? Here it is. Perfect, yes, and I even have some extra left over. So you see how I have taken my cord around the outside of the loom? I'm going to push this end down onto this corner peg. Then I'm going to snip this end here and unravel back and tie off at this point at the corner, and then I'm going to start stitching through the cord just using a needle. And I will use yarn ends. Actually, what I might do is I might just unravel this one and use this thread as the stitching thread. I want to take my needle through all the loops on the peg and go through under, so that it's going to each of the loops is going to be stitched to the outside edging, and I'll take little stitches across to connect the perimeter edge that length of cord that I took around the outside edge to the traveling edge cord that went around as I was layering. So I'm going to just unravel this and get a length of thread going so that I can start the stitching. So I'm just going to edit away, and I will be right back when I've got that ready to go. So I started unraveling from this end of the spool knitted cord, and it just didn't want to unravel. So I am saying fiddlesticks, and I'm going to insert my my scissors into, here, I'll do it over here so you can see it better, into one stitch of the spool knitted cord, and I'm just going to keep sort of tugging at it until all the yarn ends, both yarn ends from this cord and this one, will separate out, and there. So I've released that cord. Now I'll grab a needle and just pick up, let's see, okay, we don't need that over there, just pick up and see how good. That's good. So I'm going to take my needle through all the stitches. The battery took so long to the battery stopped precipitously as I was talking about snipping this yarn end that it just took forever to charge. So I'm kind of going, where was I? So where I was is just pulling the ends through this end, and I'm going to pop this end onto that corner peg, and I think I'll just bring this down a little closer so that you can see more clearly what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to do is I'll start with this thread end, and I will take it through all the loops, come down to the outside edge of the loom, and pull that strand up, and then I will stitch through the running cord that ran along as I was looping. It ran along the outside edge and the perimeter cord. Now if you want to go around the edge a couple of times with the cord, that's just fine, or you can stitch in a length of wire as well, depending on what you're planning on using this for. Okay, so I have stitched a couple of times through those. Now I'm going to go through the loops on the peg. It's really important to stitch the perimeter of the hexagon, because when you're working with the tying off of the intersections at each point, the mesh can lift up from the loom, and you don't want your loops lifting off and launching off into space and being a genuine bother when doing so. So I am going to just continue working my way around the outside edge, stitching the loops to the outside edge, stitching the running cord to the perimeter cord, and when I have finished doing that, hopefully it's showing up what I'm doing, that I'm making a secure perimeter around the outside edge. When I finish doing that, I'll come back and we'll get started on the next section. There I have the perimeter all stitched all the way around, and I'm going to show you one way of working the knots, and that is if you don't have a netting shuttle, then you can use just a craft needle. What you'll do, I'm going to, because I use this needle to stitch around, I'm going to use it now to start tying off the centers of each of the flowers. I'm going to just tilt this down a bit. You want to make a half hitch knot in each direction. So from here over to here, from here over to here, and from here down to here. And by locking, by putting the half hitch knots in at each direction, you will securely lock your little flower, and then the mesh will be secure. Now, to start, I'm going to, it's almost like a blanket stitch to do the half hitch. So I take the needle down, under, reach for it, lift it up, and you see I have left myself a loop here, and I pull that up and pull pull it up quite firmly. You do want it to lock in at the center. And now I'm going to take my yarn in this direction so that I will have another loop to come up through. There we go. Under and through and up. And once again, pulling up quite firmly. And then, which way do I need to go now? Ah, this way. There. So I've gone on all three directions and tug back. Then I'm going to move on to the next flower. What I'm calling a flower is you have an X with a horizontal line through it, and once they are all stitched, you can see they do form. It's like a bed of flowers. Okay, and it does tend to want to not hold all that firmly on the first one, so you kind of give it a little tension to work against. And let's see, this is the third direction here. You're going to be spiraling around. You'll follow around the outside line of flowers, and then when you finish working, you come back to the starting point, then you'll move up to the next inside circle of flowers, and it naturally will show itself to you so that you'll see where you're supposed to be working and stitching next. Now, when I have little glitchy bits like here I have some extra threads, I'm going to just pick those up while I am making my half hitches. When you come to the end of your yarn on your needle, just simply tie on another length. So I'm going to keep working with the needle, and when I get to the end of the needle, I will add I'll tie on the netting shuttle so that you can see how the netting shuttle goes. And as you can see, it does progress quite quickly, especially when you're sitting holding it anchored in your lap. In this situation where I'm working on the table around the camera stand, it's clumsy and slow, so you don't get the full sense of the ease and grace that you can actually come to the weaving with, or the interlacement. Some people don't consider this to be weaving, but technically weaving is an interlaced textile, and it's certainly interlaced, and it's certainly a textile. So I'm just going to pick up that stitch and carry it forward. I'm getting to the point where I want to be tying on my shuttle because this strand is getting quite short. So if you are lucky enough to find a Lily Speedo weave loom at an estate sale or a garage sale or thrift shop, but it doesn't have the netting shuttle with it, not to worry. You can, as I just showed you, you can simply do the use the needle to do your knotting. Okay, I'm just trimming off those ends, and I think I'll shorten my yarn up on my shuttle a bit here. Okay, so I need to make one more knot here. I'm caught on that knot, and release some yarn, some thread. I make my loop out here, come up through it, put a little tension on the loop so that it does lock, and there we go. Okay, that one is not cooperating. It's really tricky working around the camera stand here. very awkward. Okay, so again, it's catch with the loop of thread with your thumb, release some yarn from the shuttle, come up through, pull and lock, catch a loop with your thumb, come up, pull and lock, catch a loop with your thumb, down, up, tug. So that's the process. So I'm going to work my way around to the starting point, and then I'll show you how you will move in. It's very obvious when you're working on it that, oh, okay, I've done the outside ring and now I just move up one set of flowers. So I'm going to just carry on in that direction, and we'll be back when I have that first outer ring of flowers tied off. Okay, so I have worked all the way around the outside set of flowers, of intersections, and that brings me back to this point. So next I will start working this row and around, and so you'll spiral in, ending at the very center of the hexagon. So that's what I'm going to do now, is just carry on until I'm at the center of the hexagon, at which point I will break the thread, weave it in, and lift the hexagon off the loom. I'll be back then. So there, I have finished tying off the entire hexagon, and it's ready to pop off the loom. And you just lift, sort of flip the edges up all the way around, and off it pops. So there you go. Flower of life. I'll just come down and close it. There we go. So you can do all kinds of really fun things with the hexagons. Here's a knitting bag. I need to come back up a bit. That's okay. Good. So a knitting bag with vintage buttons and wooden handles. And here's one of my favorite bags that I made using hemp yarn, and then I did all kinds of appliques and things onto it. And it's really sturdy. I did line the inside of it with fleece, and that works just beautifully. So that's very handy for when you're lugging great quantities of things. My Etsy shop has all manner of wonderful things in it, and one of the things that's in there is an ebook of instructions for and patterns and designs for things to make with the hexagon loom. So happy weaving, happy hexagons, and enjoy.